I never believed in the supernatural, not until that night I had my first real encounter with something that I couldn't explain. I had always thought those stories were just tall tales, something to tell around a campfire, to give you chills before you drift off to sleep. But that night, everything changed. I grew up on a small farm in the northern part of New Mexico, not far from the edge of Navajo land. My family had lived there for generations, working in the land and living off what we could grow, hunt, and trade. There was always a sense of isolation, but it wasn't something I minded. I was used to it. My friends were mostly the people I met at school or the occasional visitor who could stop by when they're traveling through on the nearby highway. It wasn't uncommon to hear strange noises outside in the dead of the night. Wolves howling, coyotes yelping, maybe even the distant crackling of thunder on a dry evening. I always felt safe, though, surrounded by familiar mountains and the constant hum of the desert wind. That was until my encounter with something I could never explain. It started on one evening in the late fall. The sun had already dipped behind the hills, casting long shadows across the land. I was out in the barn, finishing up the chores, when I heard a noise, a soft shuffle of footsteps. It was strange. No one was supposed to be out there. My father had gone into the town for supplies, and my mother was inside the house preparing dinner, and I was alone. At first, I thought it might be a neighbor's dog or perhaps even a coyote. But then I heard it again. A slow, deliberate footstep, almost as if someone was trying to be stealthy. I froze, my heart racing. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I decided to step out of the barn and take a look. The night was still, and the only sound the distant rustling of dry leaves and the faint hum of the wind. I called out, thinking it might be my father who had came back from early. "Dad?" I yelled, my voice sounding too small in the vast emptiness. I stepped further into the yard, my boots crunching on the gravel. The moonlight cast a dim glow across the land, and that's when I saw it. At the edge of the yard, standing in the shadow of the large cottonwood tree, was a figure. At first, I thought it might be a person. A man maybe, but something about the way it stood felt wrong. It wasn't just the height. It was how it twisted unnaturally. Its limbs almost too long, too thin. I squinted my eyes, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The figure didn't move. I should have turned and run back to the house, but I didn't. I couldn't. My feet felt like they were glued to the ground. The figure stepped forward, slowly, its movements jerky and uneven, like it was still figuring out how to walk. But it wasn't walking on two legs. It was shifting, crouching, almost like it was crawling forward on all fours, but standing up straight for a moment, then crouching again. I could see its eyes glint in the moonlight, dark, almost black, and completely hollow. I know what you are thinking. It could be someone in a costume, some prankster, maybe. But it wasn't. I have seen enough people and animal to know the difference. And this thing, it wasn't human. I finally snapped out and ran back towards the barn. I don't know how I made it back inside, but when I slammed the door shut, I knew something had followed me. I could hear it, the sound of something moving around the barn, skittering and scratching at the wooden door. I spent the night in the barn, closing all doors and windows. But I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I spent hours sitting in the corner of the barn, listening to the rustling outside, waiting for dawn. And when the sun finally came, I thought I might have imagined it. Maybe the stress of working late, the isolation, the lack of sleep had got to me. Then I went outside the barn. That's when I saw the tracks. I found the marks on the ground, large, clawed footprints, half human, half animal-like, leading up to the barn and then disappearing into the desert beyond. They were too strange from any animal I knew, and they were too big to belong to a person. I knew then I wasn't imagining things. Something was out there, and it wasn't done with me yet. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't stop thinking about what I had seen before. My mind raced constantly, replaying the encounter over and over again in my mind, trying to make sense of it. But every time I tried to rationalize what happened, the memory of those hollow eyes and that natural jerky movement kept coming back to me. My father had returned later that morning. I told him about the strange footprints. He wasn't as concerned as I thought he should be. He explained sometimes wild animals, like mountain lion, wolves, even birds, could leave strange tracks, especially in the areas where the ground was soft. But those tracks weren't like anything I had ever seen before. I knew he was trying to calm me down, to reassure that it was probably just some animal. But something in his eyes told me that he knew what it was. That night, as the sun set and the air grew colder, I felt a growing unease. I knew I had to stay alert. Whatever it was, whatever had been lurking near the barn, I couldn't just ignore it. I stayed inside that evening, and my father kept the light on, more as comfort than for any practical reason. But despite all our precautions, something felt off. Around midnight, I heard the unmistakable scratching, the kind of sound that made my blood run cold. It was soft at first, like the tap of a claw against the wood, but it grew louder and more intense as the minutes ticked by. I tried to ignore it at first, thinking it might just be a stray dog or a raccoon this time. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. I grabbed a flashlight and a hunting rifle from the closet, unsure of what exactly I was preparing for. My fingers trembled as I checked the chamber, and I moved carefully to the back door. The scratching stopped when I reached there, but the silence that followed was even worse. It was thick, oppressive, as if the very air around the house was holding its breath. I called out into the night, my voice shaking. "Who's out there?" There was no answer, just the wind rustling in the trees. The faint rustle of the dry leaf shifting across the ground. But then I heard something else, a low guttural sound, a mix between a growl and something else, something I couldn't quietly identify. It came from the direction of the barn, deep and rumbled, like something was talking in the dark. The flashlight trembled in my hand as I pointed towards the barn. For a moment, I thought I saw movement, something fast, darting between the shadows. I couldn't make out what it was, but I knew it wasn't a deer or any animal I had seen around the property. I didn't wait to see more. I bolted inside, locking the door behind me. My heart hammered in my chest. I could hear it, whatever it was, moving just outside. The sound of claws scraping along the wooden walls, a faint shuffle of footsteps, and the distant screech of something or someone in pain. I lay there sleepless for hours, and I didn't know when did I fall asleep. The next morning, I kept thinking about those sounds, about the creature outside, about what it wanted. My father noticed my unease, but didn't say anything. The next morning, I kept thinking about those sounds, about the creature outside, about what it wanted. My father noticed my unease, but didn't say anything. He went about his work on the farm, the way he always did. I followed him for a while, but it was hard to focus. My mind kept drifting back to the night before, to the thing that was out there. I spent the day pacing around the house, watching the barn, hoping for some sign that whatever it was had long gone, but it didn't. By the time evening came, I had decided to confront it. I wasn't sure what I was hoping for. Maybe I thought I could scare it off or something. Maybe I just needed to know for certain that it wasn't all in my head. I grabbed the rifle again and walked out the barn. The air had the oppressive stillness to it, and the sun was sinking behind the mountains. The long shadows stretched across the yard, and the night felt like it was closing in around me. I could feel my pulse pounding in my throat as I neared the barn. The door was ajar, and there was a smell in the air, something recent and rotten. I stepped inside cautiously, scanning the dim interior. The light from the flashlight danced across the walls, illuminating the hay bales and the old farming tool. The place was still, silent, but it felt wrong. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and the silence was suffocating too. That's when I heard it, a soft sound like claws scraping against the wood. My heart stopped. I turned, my flashlight flickering nervously across the dim interior of the barn. There, in the far corner, a dark shape shifted. At first, it seemed to be just another pile of hay or a shadow from the roof beams. But then it moved again. The creature rose from the shadows, It wasn't quite a man, but it wasn't quite an animal either. Its movements were jerky, disjointed, like something trying to learn how to walk. Its limbs were unnaturally long, almost too thick for its body, and bent at strange angles. The skin that stretched over its form was pale and stretched tight, like leather over bones, almost sickly in its appearance. And its face, if you could even call that, was a horrific mess of features. Hollow eyes, void of darkness that seemed to absorb the light from my flashlight. Its mouth was stretched wide, unnaturally so, like it was grinning. But there was nothing remotely human about that grin, just a sharp, jagged teeth and the faintest hint of something dripping from its lip. I froze, unable to tear my gaze away from it. My breath caught in my throat. I thought about running. I thought about screaming, but I was rooted to the spot. The thing tilted its head. Its eyes, those horrible empty eyes, locked on me. The sound of its breath was wet, labored rasp, like something gurgling with blood. And then it spoke. The voice that came from it wasn't human. It was guttural, distorted, like the sound of something trying to mimic language but failing terribly. You shouldn't have come here, it said, the words slithering out of its mouth in a low rasp. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. All I could do was watch as it stepped closer, its body moving with a strange, horrifying grace, despite its grotesque form. I could smell it now, a pungent, sticky stench like rotting meat and decay. Before I could react, the creature lunged at me, fast as a whip. Its clawed hand reached for me. I instinctively raised the rifle, my hand shaking, but I wasn't fast enough. The thing slammed into me, knocking the air off my lungs, sending me sprawling to the ground. My head hit the cold, dirt floor of the barn with a sickening thud. The rifle flew from my hand, clattering across the barn door. The creature startled me, his cold, clammy hands pressing against my chest as it started down at me, grinning like a predator savoring the final moments of its prey. Its breath was hot on my face, rancid and heavy, and I fought to free myself. My legs kicked out, my feet flailing, but it didn't even flinch. The grip on my chest tightened, suffocating me. In the back of my mind, a thought dragged out clearly. This is it. This is how I die. But then something strange happened. The creature stopped. It hesitated, its hollow eyes flickering toward the barn door, toward the pale silver of the moonlight just outside. And then it made a sound, a low shrill whistle, like the wind blowing through an empty bottle. The creature froze again, and its head twisting in an unnatural anger to listen. It growled under its breath, a low sound of frustration. In a blink, it released its hold on me and backed away, its body shuddering as if caught in some internal conflict. The thing didn't take its eyes off me as it slowly retreated back into the shadows, moving in a jerky, disjointed steps. There was still the barn silent once again. I didn't move, I just lay there, trying to process what had just happened, trying to make sense of it all. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst out from his chest. I could feel the sweat slicking my palms, my face. I was shaking uncontrollably. The creature paused at the edge of the barn, turning to look back at me. One last time. It opened its mouth wide. The grin stretched even further. The last thing I saw was its glowing, hollow eyes. The endless darkness within them, before it disappeared into the night. The silence that follows was deafening. I didn't wait. I didn't think. I scrambled to my feet, grabbed my rifle, and bolted out the barn. My legs were shaky, but I forced myself to run, to get as far away from the thing as possible. I ran toward the house, not caring about the noises or exhaustion in my limbs. My mind was set on one goal: escape from there. I made it inside, locking the door behind me. I didn't stop to breathe. I didn't stop to think. I pressed my back against the door, clenching the rifle in my hand, watching the window like a hawk, expecting the creature to come back at any moment. The hours dragged on, but nothing came. The house was quiet, like before, save for the sound of the rapid breathing. I don't know how long I sat there, terrified that something was going to happen, that it wasn't over, that feeling that it was still out there, waiting, looking at me. But the night passed without any incident. I didn't sleep at all that night. I sat there, wide-eyed, until dawn finally broke over the horizon, bringing with it a fleeting sense of relief. The next morning, I told my father about everything. I didn't care if he believed me or not. The creature in that barn, it wasn't just some figment of my imagination. I had seen it, felt it, and now I know the truth. My father's face paled when I described it, and for the first time I saw something like fear in his eyes. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. We left the farm that day. My father packed our things in silence. He didn't argue when I said that we couldn't stay there anymore. He knew, just like I did, that something was haunting us, something that shouldn't be. I never spoke about it again, not to anyone. No one would have believed me, not really, but I will never forget what I saw that night. I think it was a skinwalker. The thing that wore the face of a man, but wasn't one. The thing that stalks the dark corners of this world, waiting for the right moment to strike. I have learned one thing from all of this. There are forces in this world far beyond our understanding. Some things are better left unexplored. So if you ever near the desert of New Mexico and you hear something strange on the wind, something that sounds like footsteps, but not quite like footsteps, don't go looking for it. Don't try to see what it is. It might just be waiting for you too. Hope you guys liked this video. If you did, please consider subscribing to this channel. Enable the bell icon so you don't miss new uploads. And also check out other videos in this channel too. Like them and share them. And if you have any suggestions or any improvements I need to make in this channel, please post them in the comment section. Till next time, this is Malayali WENDIGO. Bye.